Welcome back, everyone. It's louisatannermunson from Feel Good Astrology, and I've got a cracking month for you, or we've got a cracking month coming up. So this is the forecast for June 2023, and it's a real big shift from May. There's a lot of big themes I'm going to be talking about. For instance, we've got the solstice this month as the sun moves into Cancer on the 21st. We've got the full moon in Sagittarius. We've also got the new moon in Gemini. And we've got a few patterns that are going on throughout the whole month. So we've got the tail end of Pluto and Mars in their opposition. Thumbs up to that, I would say. We've got Ceres opposition to Neptune all month. And we've also got a Ceres trine to Pluto all month. This is the month ahead where a lot of mythology is coming into play. So let's deep dive into this and understand this a bit further so we know what we've got coming for the month ahead. Hey, so it sounded like a bit of a dramatic entrance there, but there's a lot of things going on. And what I really see for this month ahead in June is that we're coming out of this abstract, observable time where people are talking in terms of facts and science and legislation and all of these kind of very rational ways of being. And we're slowly throughout the course of the month moving to connect in with our instincts, our emotions, the smells, the scents, the feelings, the tastes, the touches. It's all about a return to our senses. So where do we begin? Well, I'm going to be doing this on a week by week basis. I'll be obviously starting with week 1, where we've got a couple of things going on. Full moon in Sagittarius and Venus in Leo. So I'll be talking about that in a sec. In week 2, we've got a couple of things. For instance, Mercury in Gemini and Pluto going back into the sign of Capricorn. So that's a bit of a theme going on there. That's happening on the same day. In week 3, we've got a few different things going on, including the new moon and the solstice. And finally, we've got week 4, which looks a little bit like light relief. It's funny, in the last 4 months or so, the last week has indeed been the one without so much going on. So I'm kind of enjoying, I'm going to enjoy looking forward to that one. Yeah, and as I'm going through these week by weeks, I'm going to pull up the charts for the new moon and the full moon and give some ideas as to how we might manage ourselves in those moments. Okay, so we've got this theme of the mythology coming up and is coming to kind of bring its meaning out. Now, I've spoken about Saturn's mythology in the Saturn into Pisces video, and I've also spoken about the Pluto mythology in the Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius. I've also spoken about Jupiter's mythology in the Jupiter in Aries and soon to be Jupiter and Taurus as well. So I don't want to repeat too much, but suffice to say, Uranus, who I think I've also spoken about, Uranus is the granddaddy. He is the father of the Titans. And one of the Titans, these big gods, was Saturn. And Saturn, also known as Kronos, the kind of father of time, god of time and natural order. He really wanted to keep natural order. And, anyone that's examined Saturn in their own charts will know that. Now, Saturn had 6 children with his wife. Now, they are Pluto, Neptune, Jupiter, Ceres, Vesta, and Juno. They have different names according to whether you're Greek or Roman. But anyway, they're the names I'm using, and they're the ones we use mainly in astrology. Now, these children were all swallowed by Saturn when his wife gave birth to them. He was so worried that he was going to be usurped. He was told that one of his kids would overcome him and take down his power. And Saturn self-protects, so any Saturnian energy has this tendency to self-protect. Now, Jupiter was the last baby to be born, and by this time his wife was a little bit fed up, and she swapped the baby for a stone, and he ate the stone, and she raised Jupiter in a mountain, being looked after by somebody else. And when Jupiter came of age, he went and avenged his siblings. And I can't remember if he gave him some poison or just cut open Saturn's stomach, but all of his siblings came out fully with their powers, and they came out. Now, one of the things that strikes me about this astrology in this month ahead is from the new moon, from the full moon right the way to the new moon, we've got Pluto, Jupiter, Neptune, Ceres, Vesta, and Juno, all 6 of these children in aspect to each other. And they are pretty much in aspect to each other throughout the month in one way or another. But at the time of the new moon, all of them are together. And all of them are working together. So, for instance, I see Ceres as being the linchpin here, and Jupiter. So Ceres is in opposition to Neptune. And I'll tell you a bit about that in a second. But Ceres is also trine to Pluto as well. Now, Ceres is also known as Mother Nature. She's also known as Demeter. So she is like the goddess of the earth. She is the one that births everything. She is the one that knows the patterns of life. And she's resplendent. She brings about our spring and our summer. She also brings about our autumn and winter. And if you've listened to me talking about Ceres, she lost her daughter, a suspected kidnapping, that's not entirely sure, but kidnapping into the underworld. And she stayed with Pluto in the underworld for 6 months of the year and then came back up. And so during that time when her daughter's away, Ceres grieves. And then we have autumn and winter, like she stops growing things. So, you know, we've got the cycles of life with Ceres. We've got this beautiful protection and this lovely nurturing to look after energies and look after people, look after the planet, look after our families. And then we've got this grief where we let things go. So with Ceres being so integral to these charts, what's coming up for me is this feeling that this is a month ahead where we are absolutely observing the cycles of life. That's a real key one. Observing the cycles of life. We might be grieving what is lost, and we might also be birthing and getting excited about nurturing in a new way. We have a new opportunity to nurture. So I really think as we're coming out of the abstract observable facts represented by the Gemini sun, and, you know, as we go into this month ahead, Mercury is in his own sign of Gemini. You know, as we go through this, we become more into our Cancer state. We move gradually, we transform into the Cancer state, leading up to the solstice. So I'm going to definitely look at the full moon, new moon, and the solstice charts and examine that. There are some very big themes. So before we go any further, Ceres in opposition to Neptune. Neptune is about what's undefinable. It's a higher love harmonic, but it's also about creativity. And I always think it's a good definition for it is how we lose ourselves. And when we're losing ourselves in a sort of high end vibration of Neptune, we are merging with the idea of infinity. We're merging with infiniteness. We are in a state of oneness. We're in a state of bliss. And, you know, our immediate identity no longer becomes that important. And so, again, the whole idea of boundaries is just, you know, where are the boundaries? We just don't need them. Now, how we might lose ourselves and our identity when we're in a negative Neptune state is through drink, drugs, inappropriate sex, anything that's takes you outside of yourself, like a good Netflix drama or season. You know how people do those. You know, they'll go for a whole storyline arc for a whole weekend, boozing, eating chocolate and pizza and stuff. It's how we lose ourselves. We get absolutely fascinated by something else, or it's a deep dive, you know, like I can see it's completely possible to get yourself lost and locked in politics too, which would be a very sort of like negative Neptune, where we allow our imagination, our creativity to take on board these stories as if they're really real, because we don't actually know, unless politics actually hits us straight in the face, we don't actually know that it's real. All we know is what we're told. It's like the big projection screen is Neptune. So we've got Neptune in opposition to Ceres, and Ceres is really wanting it to be real. Ceres is your mum. You know, Ceres is wanting to hug you, touch you, say they're there, you know, let's look after you. And so there is this really big sensation throughout the whole month of, are we distracting ourselves? And then what is that lovely force that brings us back into who we really are and where we really came from? So I think that's really interesting and exciting. And Neptune can also, I think, like when Neptune went into the sign of Pisces, boy, did it coincide with the onrush and the onslaught of social media. And we're still not at the end of that, you know, and social media is going to quite a distracting place, and often quite sadistic, quite psychopathic, quite nebulous place, which are all the downsides of Neptune. And so Sarah is the real, the loving, the mum, the energy, or the parental, if I'm not trying to offend you if you're a loving dad or anything, but it's that energy of nurturance that brings us back into who we really are. So it's like a fight between what isn't real and has got our attention and what is absolutely real in our hearts. And that really matches the whole idea of Gemini into Cancer, the whole idea of, the abstract observable facts, the story, the news, the fanfare of what's going on, and let's all get really bothered and everything. And then it's the drawing out and come back into nature, come back into yourselves, come back into your breath, come back into mum, so that's definitely going on. Also, other big mum themes will be showing up as well in the media. So like the idea of the anti-mum. Like there's lots of themes right now in social media and in governance. There's lots of themes going on about obviously birthing. Do you refer to women as a woman or a birthing person? There's an attack on the actual mum. And then there's also the idea that I saw a news piece this week saying hospitals are now asking men if they're pregnant before they do a scan of them, so they don't upset their pregnancy. And so there's like real mums versus wannabe mums, and their rights and how we handle that. There's also the idea in the media, and I think Joe Biden said it this week, that there are, I think if you're like Christian or family values, like Christianity, homeschooling, people going to the PTA meetings, their school board meetings, and standing up for family values is now seen as almost like domestic terrorism. So, there's the whole idea of where traditional mums have now become the anti-mum or the domestic terrorist mum. So there's a lot of mum themes going on. Oh, and, let's not forget people are still reeling over decisions and ongoing like changes to legislation in terms of what is okay in terms of abortion. Is it my body, my rights? Does my baby have rights? And is it a baby growing inside us? So there's all these mum-child ideas going on right now. Now, we've also got Ceres in a trine with Pluto pretty much all month. And I think that is the mother bringing her kids back into safety. Like Pluto represents the god of the underworld. He's also known as Hades. He's also the god of wealth and power. Like wealth, power. I want that wealth and power. Give it to me. So, Pluto really goes for it. And he drags the kids into the underworld. Into the place where he might choose to teach them about things that maybe the mum doesn't want to. It's almost like once the children are taken out of mum's protection, out of mum's control, maybe when they're at school or on social media, in all different ways, Pluto and all the things that Pluto is influencing, it's a bit of a custody issue fight between the idea of what mum wants for her children and what society or what big power wants for the children. But what's actually good about this month ahead is I actually think that mum is actually bringing her kids back. It feels like mum is getting more control back. I know another theme going on in particular with parenting is the idea that who do your children belong to? Now, there's a spiritual idea that the children belong to the world, and they are born as a reflection of source energy or God's love or whatever, however you want to call it, and that they don't really belong to anyone. But we might ask, who is the actual custodian of the children? Who is there to look after the child and to ensure the child grows up? And in recent times, the state has really taken a claim over children, and yet there are lots of mums out there that are, hang on, this is my child, and ultimately I take full responsibility. Like if a child does something wrong, it's the parents that can get locked up and put into some kind of corrective program, not the government. So there is this sort of constant tussle, as in who is in charge of the children. And so with Ceres in a trine to Pluto, I really think that mum is getting a bit more power back, and there's a bit more of a balance. And it makes me ask, who can you trust with your most precious beings? Absolutely. And we've also got Vesta and Juno working throughout the month with the sun and the moon. Now, the sun represents our outer personality, the moon, our inner. The sun also, at some level, represents the parent, and the moon, the child. And Vesta and Juno are working and moving at a similar speed to the sun and the moon in this month ahead, or the sun, sorry. And so Vesta and Juno are really coming. It's almost like they're pulling the sun and the moon into this greater alignment at the time of the new moon. And we'll see that demonstrated. I'll point that out when I show you the charts. So anyway, Vesta is the goddess of truth and authenticity, and the hearth, the warm fire of the home. And Juno is our dedication and our commitment. So we've got a lot of this goddess energy kind of coming in to, are they rescuing us? Are they waking up? Are they working with us? And of course, like, is it that they are an actual entity, or is it just the energy, the different facets of energy that we all reflect somewhere in our own character, in our own personality, in our own birth charts? So let's see. Anyway, let's have a look at the first week. So in particular with the first week, there's a few different aspects coming up. I need some glasses. I realize I'm looking onto another screen. And I actually need to blow this up a bit more, unless it's right in front of me. I have no idea what I'm looking at. It's not really enlarging. Okay, well, the things that I'm most intrigued by actually is the full moon in Sagittarius on the 4th, and Venus going into the sign of Leo on the 5th. So let's have a look at that chart, shall we? Let's just wake up my mouse. It's gone to bed. Okay, so hopefully this is the new moon. The full moon. Yep, it's the full moon. Sunday, the 4th of June. Can't see the time. 4:41 a.m. That's London, Lisbon time. That's like Western Europe. So you can check out what time the full moon is wherever you are in the world. I always go to timeanddate.com. And then look under, I think, sun and the moon, and then there's the moon phases. It's really, really great little site. Anyway, at the time of the full moon, we've got the sun and the moon in opposition to each other at 13 degrees across the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius. Now, the moon in Sagittarius is interesting because it really gives us a need to be ourselves and to feel free and to feel quite philosophically okay to make our own decisions. You know, we are independent, we are feisty, we have that fiery energy of wanting to express our emotions really fully and freely. And with the sun in Gemini, the sun in Gemini is very much about a personality that's quite rational and very interested in all different facts and features and ideas and statistics, and this is what this law says, and this is what this book says, and look, this is what this expert said, and blah blah blah. And it's lots and lots of information. It's a great big information sort. And the adult self, which right now across the world is being best reflected through the sign of Gemini. So we are fascinated by things. Lots of information is coming at us left, right, and center to surprise and delight us. And by the time of the full moon, we're in a deeply spiritual questing kind of phase where we're starting to think, hang on a second, that is a lot of information, but what does this really mean? If we were to add up all this information, where would it lead us? So this is really, I see it as being the journey from the head to the heart. Like Sagittarians, like what makes them so philosophical and so adventurous is it's like they're listening to their heart. They're listening to what is beating in their heart. It's saying, come on, let's go. You know, the Sagittarian is half centaur, so it's half man, half horse. And if you've looked at horses for any length of time, they are free. Even the ones that, you know, are in stables and have got their little grounds to run around in. You can tell I'm not a horsey person because I don't know all the terminology. But like if you see a horse in the wild, which we do sometimes, they're instinctive. You know, they hear something, they feel something, they know it's time to move and to shoot off and run off in a new direction. And so they're deeply sensitive to the sense of what's coming up in the future. And Sagittarians are very much future paced. So, you know, we've got this idea of of facts and science and this almost like garbage, this collective garbage of information that has just been overwhelming us. And then there's this need to check in with the heart of us, checking in with the spirit of who we are and where we want to go, in which direction we want to gallop off in. So that seems pretty important. Now, I did mention the goddesses earlier, and you can see them already playing out. So we've got Neptune here and Ceres in their opposition. So again, I was talking about the sort of idea of oblivion, that place to do with Neptune, which shows us information, distractions, all sorts of things. And then we've got Ceres here saying, hang on, come back into the heart, come back into the mum, come back into the eternal relationship between mother and child, and loving custodianism or custody, loving custody. In a way that here we've got like the rational mum and the state running things. And here we've got an instinctive mum that is taking their children on an adventure and knows how to do it, because, when you trust yourself, you know exactly the right next step to take. So we've got these playing out for sure. Now, at the time of the full moon, we've also got this square to Saturn, which is interesting because in transactional analysis or triastral astrology, Saturn represents the governing, like the parent. The sun represents our personality, and then the moon, our child. So here we've got like three aspects of personal experience: the grown-up, responsible parent, the adult that just wants to make their way, and the child, and they're all either in a square or in opposition to each other. They're all stressed, just showing that we are, it's almost like, these ideas, you might have seen old pictures of people being tortured in the medieval times, and their arms and their legs are all being tightened and pulled in different directions. I see this T-square between Saturn, the moon, and the sun as being that, like we're being pulled in different directions, the human ego. And so, at some point, yes, we are wanting to make our own decisions and feel the instincts and connect back in with our instincts. And we're also aware that there's also like another part of us that we have to listen to, and that's our adhesion and adherence to the idea of a state or a governing entity. So we're not just checking in with our personality anymore and then with our instincts. Now we're also checking in with the idea that there's something outside of us that governs us too. So that's a big thing. And I think it comes to a head around the 4th. We've also got this lovely Jupiter North Node conjunction. Jupiter is about expanding, and the North Node is about the karma or the karmic direction and the karmic price that we're all paying right now. And so that I definitely see as being expanded upon and inflamed. And we could be hopeful about the changes that we're going through personally within our families and within our communities and within our countries in the world. I think all these changes that are happening are happening to us on every level. And yes, they are a blessing, and also they are very inflaming and upsetting, and everything is sort of amplified with Jupiter. And then we've got Juno right next to the sun. So Juno's just saying, look, I know you're committed to your personality. I know you're committed to following the narratives and the communities and following what we've been born into, like the relevancy, the description of who we are. Like we take our identity from what we know and what we've committed to. And here that is one of our tensions, but even though I feel like I want to be instinctive, ultimately I come from I come from a family, I come from a community, and we have expectations that have been put onto me. So we've definitely got this tension. Other things I'm fascinated by as well is Pluto in opposition to Venus and Mars. So Pluto is like big power. As I've always described, Saturn and Pluto are like the powers that be, or the people that pretend or do pull the strings, and who kind of work planet Earth. And there would have been a time when we might just talk about the village elder and the town mayor, but now it's been blown up considerably. I wonder how far it will go next, you know, how it goes any bigger than it already is. But Saturn tends to represent the people who are the guardians of Pluto. Pluto is like Darth Vader, and this is his stormtroopers. So here we've got Darth Vader, and here we've got men and women. We've got the females, we've got the men, all kind of lining up in opposition. They're all slightly on a different side. So the females are definitely in the sign of Cancer at the time of the full moon, showing that females, or those identifying with being female, are feeling quite maternal and protective and wanting to protect their families, their communities, their friendship units. It's a nourishing, protective, and we're saying, hang on a sec, you're pushing us too far away from what we can do. You know, you need to rein it in, Pluto. And here we've got Mars representing the man, or those identifying as male, and showing up in the sign of Leo, which is very strong. It's very direct. It's very proud. It's a provider. It's a creator. It's like a creator energy. And so I do also see that we've got this energy brewing at the time of the full moon. So it's huge. And, you know, in terms of week 1, we're going to be feeling that coming in up until the 4th, when it kind of discharges a little bit, like, you know, when you have a thunderstorm, you might see the flash of lightning, which is really like the point where the energy comes down to earth and it just it discharges. And yet we don't really feel the full effect of it until we feel the rumbling in the sky, and we can almost feel it in our bodies. So I do think this full moon is going to have that kind of effect, and the kind of effect whereby we are feeling the rumblings of it thereafter for quite some time. The very next day, Venus goes into the sign of Leo. And then we've got men and women all feeling very empowered, very proud, very spicy, very warm, very confident, coming into a place of sovereignty. If you think of it, Leo is the sign, like it's ruled by the lion, the idea of the lion. Lion's the king of the jungle. We are coming into a place of sovereignty, or we're wanting more sovereignty. We're possibly waking up and saying, hang on a second, how did Darth Vader over there get so much bloody power? How did that happen? We must have been sleeping on the job. So yeah, there is this feeling of people waking up. But, you know, the sun's shining and we're distractible, and it's quite easy to distract us with ideas of summer and summer holidays and stuff. But there's a lot going on, suffice to say. As we head into week 2, we've got Mercury going into the sign of Gemini on the 11th, and also Pluto going retrograde into Capricorn. So Pluto's retrograde into Capricorn, it was completely foreseen. We knew it was coming, because all of the planets that we work with, they appear to go retrograde at some point. And Pluto tends to spend about half his time, slightly less than that, or slightly more than that, I think. In actual fact, it depends on what part of his orbit he's in, because Pluto has an elliptical orbit. So in some signs, it spends like 20 years. In others, 22. I think it goes up to 30 years in some signs. So, you know, he will appear to go retrograde a little bit less in some signs and a little bit more in other signs. But Pluto went into Aquarius in March. Then last month, I think, started to go retrograde. Now he's backing into the sign of Capricorn, and he's going to be there until I think mid-January 2024. From October, he's going to start moving forwards again. But this little backward look, it's a bit like I was describing to my friend Helen today, and you'll see the little short forecast I've done with her on the channel. But I was describing a bit like when you've been on holiday and you've done your holiday, you've enjoyed it, you've done it, and you're going to get back onto the next thing, and you're off on your adventure onto the next leg, and you're just about to close the door, and then you think, hang on, let's just check I've got all my bits, and you go through all the drawers just to check that you've remembered all of your luggage. And so Pluto going retrograde into Capricorn is like saying, hang on, I didn't finish Capricorn properly. I didn't finish my Capricorn holiday of 15 years properly. Let's just sign it off properly. So if we think about Pluto, or Darth Vader as I'm calling him, in the sign of Capricorn, Capricorn is about big business and governance. And I don't know if you can hear my happy husband whistling in the other room. He sounds so jolly, doesn't he? it's all about the corporatocracy. It's about capitalism. It's where it almost eats everything. You know, it's so it's like a race to the top for a few, and as they get higher and higher up towards the top, fewer and fewer people can ever catch up. And in fact, it's like a race to the top and a race to the bottom, according to where you are. And the sign of Capricorn really epitomizes that, especially with Pluto at the top, ensuring that big power stays in power. It's been very, very well protected. So Pluto going into the sign of Aquarius is almost about the devolution of power, and it's about finding a new way to govern and finding a new way to organize ourselves. And it could be really great. It could be really technological with a lot of AI interference. Did I say interference? Maybe I meant AI benefits. Who knows? Showing a bit of bias there. But you know, Pluto's just coming back into this. We've had a little taster of some of the AI ideas on health technology and stuff. Now we're just going into Capricorn. Now Pluto, like the powers that be, are reviewing how can we take all the bits we love from Capricorn into the sign of Aquarius. But the great news is we've had a chance to see what's been going on now. Like lots of people are becoming a bit more awakened to how power is conducting itself and how it's feathering its own nest and taking feathers from our nests. And now it's going back into the sign of Capricorn for a little review until the end of January. We're getting a bird's eye view of this happening in real time. And so, yeah, I think the second week in June, it's going to get very obvious to us what has been going on and what is going on. So, for instance, Mercury is in the sign of Gemini at the time when Pluto is going retrograde. Mercury is thinking. It's really strong and it's in its thinking power. And so we've got people really being able to see things and make their own connections, and also people really talking to each other. It's fascinating. Yeah, so let's move on to I mean, there's lots of different aspects going on, and I'll probably talk about those another time. But in terms of June, the third week is pretty big. So let's bring on our next chart. I realize I'm not very structured in how I'm doing this, so please forgive me. In June, so that's the full moon. Let's have a look at the new moon on the 18th, and you'll see how the picture has changed a little bit. So we've got the sun and moon at 26 degrees in the sign of Gemini all together. Now, one thing I didn't say at the start is if you're a Sagittarius or a Gemini, you're going to really feel this month is going to be one to really help you push forwards with your life goals. And it's probably going to be quite triggering in the same way as like last month was really strong for people with a very strong Scorpio and Taurus. This time it's really Gemini and Sagittarius. If you're a Pisces or a Virgo, you're likely to feel it as well, because your sun is going to be in a square to the current positions of the sun and moon. So it's a pretty big time. Now, especially if you've got something at 26, 27 degrees in the sign of Gemini, this new moon is going to really affect you. Funnily enough, I've got my sun is actually at 27 degrees Sagittarius. So it's really going to affect me. It's in opposition. So it's completely at odds with how I am. It's funny. I've noticed a lot of people in the Feel Good Astrology community who have been contacting me and asking me to look at their charts on the Sunday shows and things like that. We're getting a lot of people with planets around 26, 27 degrees in the sign of Sagittarius. And I'm guessing it's because it's my channel and I'm drawing people with a certain resonance and likeness and energetic feel to me. So I really think this new moon is probably going to affect all of us within the Feel Good Astrology community. If you come here a lot, the chances are you've got a bit of a resonance going on there in your own chart. But anyway, these guys are together and they are connecting into this. And this is why I was mentioning the opposition between Neptune and Ceres so much, because they are in a complete T-square to the new moon. So the idea, if you remember at the start, I was talking about Neptune here, that is representing the great big distraction for people, distracting people, helping them forget who they are. And then we've got the energy of mum and natural law and the idea of the family, the community, the loving. You know, how many generations has it taken for us to come out of our unique communities and to come out of that sense of belonging or that sense of knowing? It's almost like we're in an age of being orphans, like not, you know, I'm not trying to own orphan, you know, being an orphan or anything, because there are people who are adopted into different families and who really don't know where they come from. But right now it feels like there is a cosmic orphanage or an orphan energy that seems to be arising around people. Even if you're born into your family and you know who your family is, the way families tend to be operating now at distance, and all in a very distracted way, where we've got different things to distract different age groups. It feels like there's not anything cohesive holding us all together. And so I really see that Ceres is coming in to do that. It's saying enough of these distractions. It's now time for mum to come back, or for grandma, you know, like that unifying force. Like when I was growing up, it was the grandma, you know, the grandma, and you'd have a problem. And my husband describes it quite nicely. He says, you know, sometimes all we need is to be able to go to our grandma's house and sit down, and she's not going to say, tell me about your problems necessarily. She's going to say, come on, let me put the kettle on and give you a nice slice of cake. And then she'll say, come on, then let's talk, you know. And it's that feeling of being welcomed and this feeling of belonging. So I think collectively we are yearning for belonging and noticing that we've been taken away from our sense of belonging in ourselves. And the new moon represents a seed point. It represents a moment for us to birth a new belonging. In fact, that might be the birthing a new belonging. I'm writing it down. I might use that as my title for this video. So yeah, it's a huge energy. And if you've got something to launch, if you are absolutely wanting to rebirth yourself, or get that sense of finding out where you fit in, where do you fit in this cosmic puzzle, then this is your time to birth it and to bring it into the full light of consciousness. Now, you'll notice Juno is still with the sun. It's even closer now. Vesta has moved closer into this. So she's at 28 degrees. Juno's at 27 degrees. We've got Ceres at 29 degrees. Neptune, another one of these Saturn children, is at 27 degrees. Pluto is now in the sign of Capricorn at 29 degrees. Last of all, we've got Jupiter, who's not actually matching any of these degrees, but is in a conjunction with the North Node. It's like Jupiter is the thing that is creating the new story. And that's what happened when he freed his siblings. So it really feels like the sense of siblings coming together, brothers and sisters coming together across time and space, people coming together with their unique set of skills. Jupiter, this hopeful, I mean, you could describe Jupiter as Luke Skywalker. Some people might even call Jupiter Jesus. I did a show years ago, you know, looking at Jesus and Satan and saying, you know, is Jupiter Jesus and is Saturn Satan? I mean, you've got all these different archetypes that can play out in charts in so many different ways. But like, you know, it's like Luke Skywalker versus the stormtroopers. It is like the stormtrooper, or the sort of energy of Big Brother has actually brought about all the siblings, all the people. And is it different countries coming together and coalescing? Is it people who have been activated politically for the last few years who think, hang on a second, this is two wings of the same bird, you know, maybe we need to just come together and see what's going on? Is it different religions coming together and realizing that there is something rising up against them? Or is it just that we have these separations in ourselves? This is a place of duality, of polarity. Are we allowing ourselves to be pulled apart? And how can we bring it together? In many respects, as Saturn's children are being reborn in this chart on at the time of the new moon, it's almost as if we're able to love all the different sides of us. If you think about it, Saturn's children, Pluto manages the underworld. It's like our darkest fears, our need for power and control. Then Neptune represents all that's murky and creative and the oceans, and also infinite love and connection, if you get the higher version of him. Jupiter represents expansion and hope and optimism and spirituality and pride on a negative. We've got Ceres representing custodianship of the earth. She's like the goddess of the earth and the creatures that live there. We've got Vesta. She's also known as Hestia, but we've got Vesta, who is the goddess of the hearth. She's keeping our hearts. She's keeping our warmth going. And we've got Vesta, we've got Juno, who is the goddess of our commitment and dedication. It's like all these different flavors. They could be different nations, they could be different religions, they could be different characteristics within ourselves. And it's like all of those characteristics are coming together, are working together. And in that moment of coming together, we realize we don't actually need this Saturn character here to represent us, because actually at the time of this new moon, we're in balance. We're actually feeling quite empowered. We are in connection with our childlike state, that place of innocence, that place of grace, that place of curiosity, that place of possibility. And the sun, it's like our magnificence, our adultness, our assertiveness, our understanding to know clearly what it is that we want. And we know how to get it. We're not being controlled necessarily. We can control ourselves. So I think this new moon represents a new beginning. I really, really like that a lot. And then a couple of days later, so that's on the 18th, on the 21st, let me just go the right way. We've got the equinox. And so the equinox represents the reset of like the start of a new season. This is the season of summer in the northern hemisphere, and the start of winter in the southern hemisphere. So we've got like one of the main feelings about this new reset is that we are connected and we are determined and we are committed to love. We are committed to love and bringing in that sense of family and that sense of connection, which is an overpowering theme of the sign of Cancer. And at the same time, the moon, which is our imagination, our creativity, our innocence, and Venus and Mars are all in the sign of Leo. So we are playful, we're expectant, we're going to try new things. We're not going to think that we have no power to do them. We're going to feel quite empowered to be playful. So I love this. I really think this new season is going to get off to a good start. Now, also the sun and our commitment to ourselves and our commitment to coming back into ourselves is supported by Saturn rather than ruled over by Saturn. It's like we can find the resources we need. We can find the determination, the patience, the dedication. We can find the maturity that we need to be able to do everything. It also probably shows as well with this balance that some of the older generations that maybe have rubbed their hands of us and said, okay, we're done now, we're retired, we're going to sit down and enjoy ourselves. And fair play, they've worked hard, but it almost looks like we've got the children, the adults and the elderly kind of working together. I really like that thought that, we have elders in place, because where we don't have these elders participating, we have these crazy elders running the top countries of the world, people in their 70s and 80s. I mean, let's actually work with Nan and Granddad, please, and not need to bring in people that maybe should have retired years ago, or maybe should never have been in power. I mean, that's the funny thing about power, isn't it? The only people that want those jobs in power really want the power, or can be corrupted by it. We tend to go for what we need, so I find myself in a job where I'm giving advice, probably because I feel like I'm questing to try and find my own answers. I'm a little bit suspicious of people who want lots of power or want to work to have the power, because they're looking for power at some level in their life as well. And fair play to you. You know, we're each on our journey. So yeah, this looks like quite an interesting new scene that's set. And to me, you know, in particular with this new moon, it feels like the secrets represented by Pluto and the underground, what is underground and what is deemed depraved, what is demonic, again, another word we might use for Pluto. Where is all the massive amounts of wealth? Where is the massive amounts of cruelty and psychopathy, all characteristic and characterized by Pluto? It's starting to come out. It's being shared. We're able to process some of it. We're able to see it. We're able to understand it. So I think this is a very, very strong time. Yeah, so they are my thoughts about this month ahead. Some really big themes. In the last week, we've got Mercury going into the sign of Cancer. And so, as I said right at the start, you know, we're coming from this place of rationality, abstract, observable facts, and we're coming into ourselves, that sense of us, our sense of intuition. By the end of the month, Mercury, our thinking function, is coming into the sign of Cancer as well. So it's almost like everything has come into this lovely place of warmth and empathy and connection. So yeah, birthing a new belonging. And if you've enjoyed this, then check out this playlist here, because this is where I've got my 5-minute forecasts for the month ahead. And also you might benefit from checking out Pluto through the houses, which looks at the psychology of us, and how we can use it, you know, how we can use our fears, how we can work through them, and just have some fun. So anyway, thanks so much for joining me today. If you haven't subscribed already, but you like the cut of my jib, then please do drop me a little subscribe below. Lots of love. Bye for now.